The only question that matters is not who is the boss, but who is talking to whom. That single idea, it just pulls back a curtain on a hidden layer of reality, doesn't it? It shows us a world of power that operates completely outside of the formal structures, way beyond the org chart and the official titles. Today, we're going to deconstruct these covert alliances. We're going to expose how smart, strategic people form these power partnerships right under our noses, using invisible arrangements to get what they want. This isn't just an analysis. This is a deep dive into the architecture of unseen power. We're looking at the blueprints of influence itself.
Just look at that line again. Seriously. It's the key that unlocks everything we're talking about today. It completely flips our most basic assumptions about authority. See, we're all trained to look up, right? To find the person in charge. But this forces us to look sideways, to trace those invisible lines of communication and trust. True influence, real power, it isn't about the position you hold. It's about the information you control, the favors you can call in, and the network you can activate at a moment's notice. These are the kinds of coalitions that can make or break careers, kill projects, and shift entire organizations, all while staying completely invisible to the untrained eye.
Okay, let's get into it. Here's our roadmap for this whole deep dive. First up, we're going to define the invisible architecture. We're going to name the ghost in the machine. Then we'll break down the mechanics of influence to really understand the blueprint. After that, we'll explore the psychological trap to see why this is also effective. Fourth, we're going to give you the strategic countermeasure to make the invisible visible. And we'll wrap it all up by reframing our entire understanding of influence with this core idea. Power is a network.
All right, let's start by identifying a problem that I think a lot of us feel, but we really struggle to put into words. This is all about putting a name to that nagging feeling that the game is somehow rigged, that the system isn't working the way it's supposed to, but you just can't quite pinpoint how or who's behind it.
I want you to think about a time you launched a really great initiative. A solid plan, clear benefits for everyone, but you just hit one bizarre roadblock after another. A key piece of information you needed suddenly goes missing. A colleague who's normally supportive gets all vague and evasive, citing some fuzzy concerns. A critical approval gets held up for a reason that makes absolutely no sense. Now, if you look at each event by itself, it's plausible. It's just one of those things. But the pattern feels intentional. It's the rhythm of the resistance, that strange harmony in the opposition. That's what creates this deep sense of helplessness and confusion.
And this is crucial. That experience creates a state of what psychologists call cognitive dissonance. Your brain is wrestling with two ideas that just don't fit together. On one hand, you believe that problems are supposed to be individual, random events. On the other, your gut is screaming that what you're up against is systemic, that it's orchestrated. So, let's say you propose a new project. Your boss, who's usually on your side, suddenly brings up budget issues you know you've already solved. Then, someone from a totally different department questions the timeline. Individually, totally normal workplace hurdles, but your gut says they're connected. That conflict, that mental static in your head, that is the cognitive dissonance. And the hidden alliance is counting on it. It's a psychological fog of war, and it's designed to keep you from seeing the coalition working against you in the background.
And that leads to their first real strategic weapon, the ambiguity advantage. Because you can't see the coordination, you can't possibly fight it. The resistance starts to feel like it's coming from the system itself, like it's just the way things are around here. This ambiguity makes their collective opposition feel like some unchallengeable force of nature. It makes you question your own judgment, your own strategy, and in the end, it makes you back down. Their power is in making their actions deniable and your reality confusing.
Okay, so now that we've identified the problem and that feeling it creates, let's shift gears. We're going to move from the emotional experience of being the target to the cold, hard, mechanical analysis of the machine itself. We're about to look at the blueprint, the actual engineering of how these invisible structures get built and how they're maintained.
This is the real question, isn't it? How do two or more people combine their power to create something way bigger than the sum of its parts, and do it all without a formal charter or a public announcement? Well, it's not magic. It is pure strategy. The answer is in the conscious, deliberate pooling and exchange of specific, non-obvious assets. You can think of them as different kinds of currencies.
Now, this is really interesting because it breaks influence down into three distinct currencies of power. First, you've got informational power. Think about the executive assistant who knows everyone's schedule, and more importantly, they know the real deadlines, not the public ones. Their leverage is gatekeeping. Second is expert power. This is that quiet engineer who's the only one who really understands the old system that everything runs on. Everyone has to go to them. Their leverage is their unique credibility. And third, referent power. This is that super charismatic team lead that everyone just naturally likes and wants to help out. Their leverage is pure social capital. A covert alliance forms when these different people realize they can pool their different currencies together for a massive compounded return.
And the starting point, the spark, is a moment of cold recognition. This isn't about friendship, it's about mutual strategic utility. One person might have high referent power. Everybody loves them, but they don't have access to key information. Another person might be an information gatekeeper, but maybe they aren't very well liked. They look at each other and see that their power bases are complementary. It's a quiet, rational calculation. What you have, I need, and what I have, you need. Together, we are way more powerful. That's the silent handshake, the unspoken agreement that kicks the whole thing off.
And once that partnership exists, this right here is the psychological engine that strengthens it and makes it almost unbreakable. It's a brilliant feedback loop. Let's walk through it. Step 1. A partner loans out their power. Maybe they share a critical piece of private info or they publicly back the other person in a key meeting. Step 2. That action proves they're a reliable ally, which builds trust. Step 3. This creates a powerful psychological urge in the person who received the favor to pay it back. We call that reciprocity pressure. It's a deeply human thing. And step 4, the cycle just repeats. And with each exchange, the commitment gets bigger and the bond gets tighter. This is what turns a simple, tactical exchange into a hardened, loyal alliance.
Okay, so we've seen how these alliances are built through this mechanical process of exchange and reinforcement. Now let's get into why this system is so psychologically devastating to anyone on the outside. To really get its external power, you have to first appreciate the internal psychological dynamics that glue it all together.
This slide just lays out the profound asymmetry of the whole situation so clearly. Inside the alliance, you've got a strong in-group bond. They're operating with clarity, with purpose, and with a psychological compulsion to have each other's backs. But for the opponent on the outside, the experience is the complete opposite. They feel a paralyzing helplessness against a force they can't even name. Their mind gets totally bogged down by the high cognitive load of trying to connect the dots, trying to make sense of things that don't make sense. And that mental exhaustion, that's a strategic objective of the alliance. It's designed to drain your energy and focus, making it much more likely you'll just give up.
So let's formally define this weapon again, because honestly, it is the cornerstone of the entire strategy. The ambiguity advantage is the benefit the alliance gets when their coordinated moves are seen by their target as just random, unfortunate events. This is not a side effect. This is a deliberately cultivated psychological weapon. This is where the trap closes. When their coordinated silence in a meeting looks like the whole system rejected your idea, or when their synchronized questioning looks like genuine, widespread doubt. They have literally weaponized plausible deniability.
All right, we've identified the problem, we've analyzed the mechanics, we understand the psychology. Now we get to the practical application. Think of this section as a tactical briefing. How do you actually neutralize these networks? How do you fight a ghost? The answer is simple, but it is not easy. You make it visible.
This is the fundamental challenge, right? It feels impossible, but it's not. Neutralizing an invisible network isn't about some big public confrontation that can often just backfire on you. It's about strategically changing the environment so the network can't operate in the shadows anymore. You don't attack the players, you change the rules of the game. You basically turn on the lights so everyone can see where all the pieces on the board really are.
So your very first actionable step is you have to become a master pattern recognizer. You have to stop dismissing strange events as just coincidence and start treating them as data. When two or more people who don't normally even work together suddenly raise the exact same obscure objection using eerily similar language, that is not random. That is a signal. It's a data point that tells you there's a hidden channel of communication and coordination. You have to learn to see these patterns as little flares that momentarily light up the invisible network.
Once you've detected the network, you deploy a countermeasure. We're going to call it the Strategic Isolation Protocol. And giving it a formal name like that is important because it turns a vague idea into a clear doctrine. It shifts your mindset from being a victim to being a strategist. This protocol doesn't attack the people. It surgically targets the two pillars holding the whole alliance together: their control over information and that psychological bond of reciprocity that fuels their cooperation.
Okay, let's break down how to run this play. Step 1, like we said, is to map the pattern. Who is resisting, when are they doing it, and how? Write it down. Step 2 is to neutralize their informational power. Here's the leverage point. They thrive on controlling information that nobody else has. You counter this by demanding radical transparency. Make data, meeting notes, decision criteria, make it all public to every stakeholder. Sunlight really is the best disinfectant.
Step 3, you analyze the alliance and you identify the weakest link. This might be the person who seems the most hesitant, or maybe their personal goals don't quite line up with the alliance's agenda. It's the person who benefits the least. And step 4, this is the critical move, you break the reciprocity loop. You make a direct, high-value, unilateral offer to that weak link. Give them something they value, a key piece of information, public credit for their work, a connection they need, with absolutely no strings attached. This makes cooperating with you, just in that one instance, more strategically useful than sticking with their secret pact. It introduces a crack in the foundation of their trust.
So, after deconstructing this entire system, from how it's created to how you can counter it, what's the fundamental lesson? It really forces us to adopt a completely new way of looking at power and influence in any organization, in any social structure.
The ultimate takeaway is this. We are all trained to think of power as a title, a box on an organization chart. But that is a dangerously outdated model from a much simpler time. Real, lasting power is not a position you occupy. It is a living, breathing network that you consciously build, manage, and nurture. It's all about the quality of your connections and the active flow of trust and utility within them. And it requires constant attention and strategic investment.
And that leaves us with one last provocative question that I want you to think about. Now that you have this framework, this new lens for seeing the world, I want you to look at your own environment. Look at your workplace, your industry, your community. Don't look for the boss. Look for the connections. What invisible networks are quietly shaping your reality? Who is talking to whom?
And so, we end right where we began. But now, this sentence should land with a totally different weight, a different kind of clarity. It's no longer just a clever phrase. It is a diagnostic tool. It's a strategic mandate. And it is a map to the real architecture of power. Use it.